I watched 18 films in February 2026, and I ranked about 16 of them. Two of them I didn't give a rating for, and I'll explain why. And it's kind of impossible for me to rank these films from best to worst, but I'm going to kind of try. But every time I look at this list, I can interchange things. I'm going to give you my thoughts on each of the films. The first film I want to go over, the first two, I didn't rank these ones, so they're not actually the worst films or anything. But the first one was the 21 Pilots, More Than We Ever Imagined. I watched this film recently and I really enjoyed it. It's a concert film. Experience the electrifying concert film capturing 21 pilots at a career-defining moment, their monumental Mexico City headline show, performing in front of 65,000 fans at Estadio GNP during the Clancy World Tour. Set against the vibrant pulse of one of the world's most iconic musical capitals, the film blends cinematic, high-energy performance footage with intimate behind-the-scenes access, revealing the heart, humor, and humanity of the artist as they prepare for one of the biggest shows of their career. So I thought that the actual concert was really interesting, but I did find the behind the scenes a little boring. For the most part, I enjoyed it. The other film that I watched that I did not rank is The Coffee Table. Jesus and Maria are a couple going through a difficult time in their relationship. Nevertheless, they have just become parents. To shape their new life, they decide to buy a new coffee table, a decision that will change their existence. I really can't get into this film. You kind of have to go in blind, but at the same time, it's a very disturbing film. So if you're sensitive, definitely check trigger warnings because there's some things that happen in this film that is very shocking, and I really can't get into it. It was a very intense film. I remember pausing multiple times. The worst film that I have watched this month was kind of an unpopular opinion because it honestly has a decently high rating on Letterboxd as a 3.7, which is, quite a bit. And that is Angst. A killer is released from prison and breaks into a remote home to kill a woman, her handicapped son, and her pretty daughter. I thought this film, while the concept is really interesting because you get to see this film really through the killer's perspective and his thoughts and what he's thinking, and he shares his backstory. I found the film incredibly boring. Like, it's just a lot of walking and talking. And then every once in a while, there's some kills. Nothing too grisly, in my opinion, though I can see why people think it's disturbing. I just did not care for this film. I really thought it was boring. The next film was Killer Clowns from Outer Space at 2.5 stars. Aliens disguised as clowns crash land on Earth in a rural town to capture unsuspecting victims in cotton candy cocoons for later consumption. So this film's kind of wacky. I just never felt invested. This is another film that I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I think I was expecting more wacky kills, and this film just didn't deliver that for me. There is some wacky kills, like, don't get me wrong, but I kind of wish there was more. Not exactly gory. I'm not looking for a gory kill. I'm looking for just wacky. And it has a few, but not enough for me. The next film at 2.5 stars is Caveat. A lone drifter suffering from partial memory loss accepts a job to look after a psychologically troubled woman in an abandoned house on an isolated island. It sucks that I don't like this film very much. I thought overall it honestly was another film that I found boring. And I just could not feel invested in this film, except for there were a couple scenes towards the end. There is a scene that's horrifying, like actually horrifying, not gory, but horrifying. And you probably know the scene if you've seen this film. And besides that, and I think maybe like one or two other scenes that I can't really think of right now, I found this film kind of boring, but like it had a really interesting concept, so I think it could have been done better. I think that if done differently, I would have enjoyed it more. On to the next film, Hellraiser, at 3 stars. A hedonistic man finds a mysterious puzzle box that summons a group of gruesome beings known as the Cenobites. These otherworldly entities open the door to a dominion where pain and pleasure are indivisible. So, this is another film that I don't know. I think I remember not being fully invested again. But I will say that the concept is very interesting, and I would say the practical effects in this film really nice, like really impressive practical effects, very gory, too sexual in my opinion. I thought for overall this film it was solid, 3 stars. I definitely understand why someone could give it a higher rating. Next film is Hellraiser 3: Hell on Earth at 3 stars again. Pinhead is set loose on the sinful streets of New York City to create chaos with a fresh cadre of Cenobite kin. And this is one where, again, I have very similar thoughts. I could probably interchange these. Like I said, I had a hard time ranking these. I could change them a bunch. But yeah, another one with really good practical effects, some really, really good gore. If I remember correctly, there's some gory imagery. Also, still pretty sexual, but I mean, it's Hellraiser. What do you expect? And I think the film is an interesting concept. The next one at 3 stars is The Menu. A young couple travels to a remote island to eat at an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises. So this is a film that, well, I could definitely see what people could like it. I just wasn't fully invested. I remember not laughing very much, at least at the first half. I think I laughed more at the second half, but I did watch in the morning, and kind of funny enough, I thought the second half, if I remember right, I wasn't as invested, even though I think I laughed more. On to the next film is Vile at 3.5 stars, which I could see why people wouldn't like this film, but it's about a group of people who awaken to find themselves prisoners in a mysterious house with no means of escape. They are outfitted with electronic devices attached to the base of their skulls. The chemical that the brain produces when in pain are collected by the devices, and when it collects a predetermined amount, the doors will open. In order to escape, they must hurt themselves and each other. To be honest, this isn't a very gory film for a film that is really about torture, but it didn't bother me that much. I could definitely see why someone who's watching a film for the torture wouldn't be too happy with this film, but I enjoyed it. I think there was if I remember right, a good range of characters, and it was interesting to see how each person would react. On to the next place, I have Hellraiser 2, Hellbound. Now confined to a mental hospital, young Kirsty insists her supposedly dead father is actually stuck in hell, following his wife's betrayal. Few believe the young woman's lurid stories. Aside from the thrill-seeking Dr. Channard, Kirsty is undeterred and, with the help of a fellow patient, heads to hell for a rescue. So this is a film that when I watched, I liked. I think I liked it a little bit more than the first film and the third. Then again, it's kind of. I don't know. I never feel fully invested in these films, I don't think. But this one really explores hell a lot. And I thought that was really interesting. And I remember some, again, really good practical effects, some really good gore. And I remember enjoying this one more. Next place at 3.5 stars is Cocaine Bear. Inspired by a true story, an oddball group of cops, criminals, tourists, and teens converge in a Georgia forest where a 500-pound black bear goes on a murderous rampage after unintentionally ingesting cocaine. This film was dumb. It also, I heard, from what I've heard, it's not accurate to the what it's based off of, like at all, really. Like it's very much exaggerated, but it was entertaining, and I can't really remember if the gore was great. I think there was one scene though that kind of got to me a little bit, which wasn't really gory, but it was that one part where I can't really spoil it, but I'll say someone was on like a medical bed in a vehicle. And on to the next one at 3.5 stars is Escape Room from 2019. 6 strangers find themselves in circumstances beyond their control and must use their wits to survive. I could see why people might not like this film. I might be wrong, but I think I remember some of the dialogue being kind of strange in this film, at least at the beginning. But I thought that the idea itself was interesting enough, to the point where I enjoyed it. I watched it with my sister, so maybe that made me enjoy it a little bit more. She seemed to really like it. I liked it. I'm excited for the next one. It's an interesting film, and I think that it's fun. It's a fun film. Next place is Green Room at 3.5 stars. A punk rock band is forced to fight for survival after witnessing an attack of violence at a skinhead bar. So, this is one that I watched, and if I remember right, it wasn't fully invested the entire time, but I remember it just being a really interesting idea, something I don't think I've heard of, like, at all, like, a story like this, and I think there's some graphic scenes. Fifth place is Ready or Not at 3.5 stars. A young bride's wedding night turns into her worst nightmare when her ridiculous rich in-laws force her to play a gruesome game of hide and seek. This one, if I remember, was entertaining, goofy, dumb. I don't know how I fully feel about the ending, but for the most part, I thought this film was pretty good, and I'm really excited to watch the sequel and see how they're continuing this story. Next place is Instant Family. So I think my entire list, except for this and the 21 Pilots films, are all like horror or kind of in that realm. But this one's not. When Pete and Ellie decide to start a family, they stumble into the world of foster care adoption. They hope to take in one small child, but when they meet 3 siblings, including a rebellious 15-year-old girl, they find themselves speeding from 0 to 3 kids overnight. So this one, if I remember right, was pretty funny. entertaining. It was just, I guess a feel-good movie might be the right word. There were some sad moments, if I remember correctly, and I think overall it was a good film. The third place is Red Rooms at 4 stars. The high-profile case of serial killer Ludwig Chilvaler, I probably butchered that last name, has just gone to trial, and Kellyanne is obsessed. When her reality blurs with her morbid fantasies, she goes down a dark path to seek the final piece of the case's puzzle. So when I watched this film, I don't think I fully understood everything in this film because I had to read subtitles. Sometimes it makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out some things. But for what I understood and doing some research afterwards, it's a really interesting story. I don't think I picked up on all the things that that most people picked up when they watched it, but I enjoyed it. Number second place, which might surprise people because this one doesn't have that great of ratings, but I will say I enjoyed it. Which is The Uninvited. Anna returns home after spending time in a psychiatric facility following her mother's tragic death and discovers that her mother's former nurse, Rachel, has moved into their house and become engaged to her father. Soon after she learns this shocking news, Anna is visited by her mother's ghost, who warns her that Rachel has evil intentions. I can't really get into this film too much with spoilers, but I will say the concept of this film is interesting, and I've watched this film before. And when you've watched this film before, you get a new look on it when you're watching it. And this is a film that you probably want to watch more than once to fully be able to get everything. Which I don't know if I still got it. I don't know if I got everything or not, but you know. First place, Renfield at 4 stars. Having grown sick and tired of his centuries as Dracula's lackey, Renfield finds a new lease on life and maybe even redemption when he falls for a feisty, angry traffic cop named Rebecca Quincy. So this film was goofy. Probably technically not a good film, like technically not a great film, but when I watched it, I enjoyed it. It was very gory, entertaining, funny. I think it's my top film this month. So that's gonna do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm still really new to this, so if you have any advice on my content, how I can improve, what I could do better, whether that be editing or, reviewing film, I would love to have that down in the comments.